Could I build and manage my own zoo while using a random wheel picker to decide what animals and theme the park would be? Like any zoo, we start with the entrance. I picked this path and I just made a simple little entrance, sort of a circular shape, but not exactly. And now it was time for our staff, and they was going to be here. And obviously staff are important to the zoo, so I thought I'd start with them first. But of course we had to spin the wheel to decide what theme they'd be. And we got an African theme, so that was great. I could straight away start adding my staff facilities. So to start off we needed a keeper hut, since we needed someone to take care of the animals. We needed a quarantine just in case our animals got sick. We also needed a surgery just in case any of our animals needed it. Of course we need our staff room to give our staff a break, and a trade centre to be able to get all the animals we would need. Now we had the staff in, it was time to add some paths, and I quickly just put a bunch of paths together. And now it was on to decorating. So I gave them plenty of trees scattered around, and of course had to decorate the inside of the staff area. I then hired the staff that I would need. Look at them, so happy to be working here. I added a bit more decoration. Now it was time to accommodate the guests before they start coming in. So I gave them some shops to keep them happy, an information centre and an ATM because I want that money. And then I decorated the place with some benches, and we was ready to look at our first animal. So it was time to spin the wheel. And we got mandrills, and Jesus Christ, they look evil. Anyway, we went about and bought our first couple of mandrills, and I bought a lot of them. Then it was time to map out a little bit so the guests could come over and have a look at the mandrills once the enclosure was done. Now I put thick glass at the beginning so then guests would have a better view, and I went with no barriers all around the enclosure so then I could layer it in rocks, and I did make this enclosure a bit too big, I'm not gonna lie. Now it was time to add rocks, and I mean plenty of rocks, constantly adding rocks. I got the outside of the enclosure done, and now it was time to focus on the inside. I wanted plenty of climbing frames just so the guests could see them climbing. I even added my own little twist to it as well, and then started with their enrichment items. And I wanted them to have plenty of dew near the front of the enclosure just so the guests wouldn't complain. Now it was time to get the mandrills in and let them explore and also see what their needs were, so I could focus on adding some plants and doing the terrain as well. They wanted a lot of short grass, so I got on with that straight away. And now they was happy with the terrain, it was time to focus on adding the plants. So I got rid of the plant that was already in here and then just went wild and added a variety of things that they liked. Mostly just trees and little bushes, just so it wasn't so bare in this enclosure. I also wanted it to look good as well, so I added plenty in here for them. And this enclosure was done, and it was looking really nice. There was plenty of climbing frames for them to climb on. I added a hard shelter, and the mandrills were all hanging about. And we had some that were just wandering. Even this little cutie that's coming up to the camera. The climbing frame was looking great, and the mandrills were using it. I mean, it was a little weird to see, but they were using it, and my little plant glitcher, love it. But now with the mandrills in, the park was popping off, everyone was coming to see. Now time for spin the wheel. And we got the saltwater crocodiles, which I love, and I had a good idea with this enclosure. I started with making a raised platform so the guests could look down and see the crocodiles. And even though you can only have 2 crocodiles unless they have babies, it was still going to be a good view from anywhere that you stood. Now it was time to add the water in, so I went with flattening the ground and quickly added the water. Now the water was in, it was time to add some enrichment items to make sure the crocodiles were happy, and I put a lot of blood scent markers around. And this is how it was looking so far, quite plain obviously. We got a male and female croc into the enclosure. I do promise there is 2 there. Yep, there we go, you can see her running off. Now with them in, it was time to do their terrain, and obviously it wasn't to their liking, so I quickly fixed that and they was now happy, so it was time for the plants. So I went straight with decorating around the water because I just thought it looked a bit plain. Then I added some trees, and then I just decorated areas that looked a little plain to me, and this was done. The crocs were loving it and even just chilling out right in front of us. The guests would have a great view on any part that they stand on, and the enclosure doesn't look too bad, and the crocs loved it as well. I then decided my zoo looked a bit plain, so I wanted to decorate it, and it was looking a lot better. And then moving on over here is where our mandrills are staying, and everything was going well over this side. So now it was time to explore a bit more of the park, and like I say, I decorated a lot of it. And then here's my big problem. Everyone was just gathering on the path that I made because I made it too small, but it was fine because we expanded and it was time to get something new. So we had a new staff work zone, and this was going to accommodate any other animals we was going to add. So I went around with decorating, of course, and I think this one looked a lot better than the first one. It's a lot more pretty, not gonna lie. Here's a quick tour of the new staff facilities and the decoration. Like I say, it's a lot better than the first one, and they have everything they could dream of. It's so bright and colourful, so they should be very happy. I spun the wheel again and I landed with the timber wolves. Now wolves are one of my favourite animals, not gonna lie, so I was really excited to do this. Of course it was just rocks, rocks and more rocks, and I even did a hard shelter for them out of rocks, like a little cave for them, just so they would keep dry and so it was nice and away from the guests. Now it was time to get our furry friends in, and they looked adorable. I just want to take one home, but obviously I can't do that. For legal reasons, that's a joke. Anyway, now it was time to focus on their habitat because obviously it was quite plain in here. I didn't add too much to this enclosure, it was mostly just trees, just so it didn't look so spacious around, some leaves as well. I ended up decorating the place and added a Gila monster just to get more guests over this area, and it was quite cute. And like I said, I decorated it, I had some shops so the guests would be satisfied, and this place was actually looking really cute. With the wolves, I had a bit of an issue. The guests were complaining they couldn't see, so I ended up adding a higher platform so they could see over the enclosure instead. Now it was time to spin the wheel again and see what animal we would get. And we got the spotted hyena, and that was perfect, so I went about buying them. They was happy with 4 members each, 2 males, 2 females. So I wanted guests to have a better view of this enclosure, so I went with adding glass around and then concrete in the parts I didn't want them to see. And it went well. Then I started with the path, adding it all the way around as well, just so the guests would have more of a chance to see the animals. I started with adding a few enrichment items around, just so they would go near the glass. Now it was time to get them in, and they looked adorable. And we had 3 of them, so that was good enough. Then I wanted to do my own shelter, so I ended up making it in the place where the guests wouldn't really see, just so they'd have a place to hide. I added a roof on top, and then inside I also added the bedding, so they would be more than comfortable. And now, because this enclosure was empty, it was time to add plenty of trees and some decoration around, just so it looked a lot better for them. The spotted hyenas now had a new home, and this home was perfect for them. They had plenty of space to run around, plenty of things to do, and it was really nice for them. Now the guests were loving the park as well. Plenty of guests were hanging around these shops and enjoying themselves. The wolf enclosure was getting really popular as well. I ended up adding another higher platform because I wanted guests to see better. Now moving away from this section, we have the crocodiles, and their enclosure is still quite popular, and they were just having the time of their lives as they normally do. Then moving back to near the entrance, obviously a lot of guests were starting to come in. We had plenty of shops for them. Moving over to the mandrills, they was all happy, and their enclosure was still really spacious, but they didn't mind. Going back near the entrance, and all the guests are flocking in. This is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.